Hi, Dr. Bureau. This is dcolucci, and thanks for joining me on my synthesis of literature on creative leadership, creative influence from seminal works on a dare to be great information engineer, me. And while I don't do a lot of engineering work these days, most of my career has been really devoted to the design and architecture of information systems in education. So that really covers a lot of the literature that I've dealt with in coming to where I am today. So what I've done in this presentation is compiled some of the books that were important to me as an upcoming professional, and some of the texts that we looked at in this class. I also identified some of the articles that I was able to find from within Blackboard that were provided in the shell, and I picked out some of the ones that I identified with, and then also found some of my articles, some articles on my own from EDUCAUSE and other sources online, reliable ones, peer-reviewed ones, journal articles. So what I'm going to do is take you through this presentation. We're going to look at what I believe to be seminal works and ideas that influence my leadership and creativity, why I believe these are seminal works, why they're the beginning of something, and how the works synthesize to construct my influence and creative leadership and thinking creatively. So without further ado, I'll take you to the first slide. Okay, first off, please allow me to say that this slide is probably not quite what the assignment had in mind when this was put out, but I just wanted to bring this slide up and talk about my perspective and perhaps where I'm coming from. And so this is the derivation of creativity and leadership. When I was very early in my career, I really didn't know where I was going, or maybe even perhaps where I was coming from. So I spent a little time when I first started to actually get into my career and my profession and started thinking about those things. And I read this book called Personal Power by the probably well-known Anthony Robbins, and it really sat well with me. It really kind of exploded my brain a little bit and like sort of opened things up for me and allowed a lot of other things to sort of enter. And so it gave me a lot of confidence in myself. And that led me to read a lot of other business and self-help books, which is why these courses over the past few semesters have been, they really have touched me personally, because I've spent a lot of time in the self-help section of bookstores, and that's something that over the years I think that I've really focused in on. So in line with doing information technology, I always really wanted to be a better information technologist, and in order to do that, you have to reflect, and that's what these courses are about. So over the years, I've read, Personal Power, then I got into Ken Blanchard, read, 1 Minute Manager and some Carnegie books and Napoleon Hill, going down the line, and even did some business on my own. So I read some more business-oriented books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and put those things into real practice. And and here's one from Malcolm Gladwell, The Tipping Point. Those are also very good. So these books, while not maybe seminal in the term that this assignment is trying to reach for, in the global perspective of things, they are seminal. These books have always been thought of as groundbreaking in some fashion. So I wanted to bring these to your attention just because they are seminal works in my opinion, and there's things that I'm familiar with. So and as it's almost in chronological order if you look at it from top down, left to right. In terms of their release dates, maybe not so much 7 Habits, but yeah. So more recently, I've read Good to Great and the CIO Playbook. Dare to Lead was a good one, and I think behind this video was one of the books from this course, which actually I thought was really good, but we didn't really focus in on too much, which was the I think it was Dare. Is it Dare or a Drive. It was Drive. Yes. So these books are what I consider seminal works. So I'm actually, like I said, I'm going to cover some books that I've read and some of the books from this course and what we're going to be talking about in those, and then the articles and the articles that I picked up on too. So just wanted to bring this one up. Since we're in the business of synthesizing for this project, I wanted to present the books from this semester and denominate them into a single word. And the only word that comes to mind when I think about these books is motivation. These books were all about motivation. So I'd like to take them one at a time and talk about why I think that. Change by Design was really about global motivation and how the world has evolved and how the design of the world affects people's socioeconomic development and societal motivation. That's what I really sort of got out of that, is that the design of things can affect people's inner creativity. And there was another book, I think it was, I'm going to jump down to Creative Leadership, where it directly correlates creativity with motivation. Without creativity, basically the book says that you can't have motivation. And I actually took an excerpt from that book and wanted to read it in this presentation. It says that inspirational motivation underscores the importance of a vision as a compelling force toward change. In other words, inspiration underscores the importance of vision, and you need to have inspiration in order to have change, inspiration and motivation. So in the field of creativity, the ability to work towards a vision has been considered one of the primary personal characteristics of highly creative individuals. One must first be able to imagine what is possible in order to then create. So imagination, motivation, creation all succeed in that order. And that is on page 15 of chapter 1 of that book. And so the other two books, the 10 Faces, of course, we went over that book pretty far, pretty in depth, and everybody sort of identified themselves to a few of the faces. In our last project, many of the people, I think, chose hurdler, and some of them the director, but all of those things have an underlying motivation to them, I believe. Like, you can't really think of ways to be a hurdler, how to try and figure out 20 different ways to get something done, regardless of being told no, that you cannot, unless you have some sort of inner motivation. And Drive, which again was probably my favorite book of this. It was, like you said, I think in the beginning of the course, this is probably one of the easier reads of all of them. Maybe that was why I really like this book, but I really thought that this was a good read. Behind that was that book was more about that people aren't really trying to receive rewards in this world. People really want to learn for themselves. They want to be able to realize that they can do things, and that is a motivationally based theory. So again, that's what I synthesize out of the text, out of this course, is really where our motivations come from. And when I go back to that first slide, when I began reading those self-help books and doing a lot of reflecting on where I was coming from, where I was going, that really came, the motivation was there, and those things really opened up things for me in realizing that that there was something worth trying for. And I think that's, I think everybody feels that way. They feel like they can make a difference and learn along the way. That's what really gets people going. So on to the next slide. So these are the articles that I pulled from the Blackboard folders that were posted this semester as potential seminal works that we could read, I believe. I think that's what they were there for. The next slide covers the ones that I went out and found myself, but I did pull these out as ones that were at least initially, of interest to me. A Future That Works, a glimpse into the future of learning, creating schools for the future, not the past, for all students, the origins of creativity, which is really sort of more of a long history of human development, and the future of learning, education in the era of partners in code. Now, they really don't tie together. As I was reading these, I didn't find anything that denominated all of them, but there's an underlying motivational flavor to them, just like all of the other textbooks we have read. The first article, A Future That Works, reminded me of a video that was posted, I think, last week, or in one of the folders that was provided on Blackboard. I don't know who was in their interview, but they were talking about automation and how robots and computers may have the ability someday to take over human jobs. And I side with the interviewee on that one, in that there's really no way that computers can ever really take over what human beings do. There's just too much intuition involved. There's too much personality involved, and what they were saying in this article and in that interview was that human beings are more than just task oriented, and that computers can handle tasks, but that they can't really take over jobs. And one of the statistics in this article said that 60% of all occupations have at least 30% technical automatable activities, which means that most of the jobs out there have only 1/3 of the ability to be automated. So, there you have it. It's not really going to be possible for somebody that's especially a blue collar worker or an iron worker or a construction worker for that to be taken over. To some degree, a computer might be able to do that, but never fully enough. And my opinion as somebody that works on that field is that the more computers and technology we have, the more people we're going to need to run them. So I just don't see that happening. But that's the flavor of this article, and I'm just going to move on to the next one. A glimpse into the future of learning. This is really more about how we're going to need to change technology to suit the future student, and I think there's some truth to that. As we do evolve, we have to change technology so that it suits the trends of some of the students. But I really believe that in the foundation of things, learning will always be learning. You're going to need to read and regurgitate, and that's really what it comes down to. The environments of learning might change a little bit. You might have more media or more, you might be doing things remotely, or you might have things on your phone. But the truth of the matter is, whether or not the data is right in front of you all the time, or if it's in a Blackboard system all the time, or if your teacher's local or remote, learning will always be learning. And that's where we can talk about that all day long, and I just think at the end of the day, a student will always be a student, and a learner will always be a learner, and a classroom will always be a classroom, regardless if it's digital or on ground. So that's that. Creating schools for the future. That was okay. So there was something very interesting about this one, and I just pulled. So this is really more about some of the systems thinking we talked about, and sustainability. And the one thing that stuck out for me from this article, and it goes back to what I was just saying, was that if you teach a child something, you have stolen forever their opportunity to discover it. So it's funny, I think that term came up in the Turning Learning Right Side Up, getting something back on track from that last book we read last semester, or maybe the one before that, in that you really want to encourage people to learn on their own, that you want them to find their own pace in discovering things. And in that way, they will not only have learned something, they will have learned that they can discover something. So I think that the point of this article was pretty good in presenting that. And I just really wanted to bring that up. So yeah, this article really touches on some of the pedagogical concerns, and this is a Peter Senge article. So it talks about systems thinking and education for sustainability, a lot of the things that are pretty consistent with some of his other writings as well. The next article, which is The Origins of Creativity. So this was really more of a history of the development of technology, from the origins of human beings and technology. So this would really touch upon some of the other things that we have been learning, but I thought it was very interesting that there was one statement in this article that said the larger a hunter-gatherer group is, and this is going back to thousands and thousands of years BC, right? The larger a hunter-gatherer group is, the greater the chances are that one member will dream up an idea that could advance technology. Now, that may not sound interesting on the surface, but everybody who I know who is not living in America wonders why Americans are the ones that are always coming up with the great technology, or most of the time are coming up with the better technological ideas, like social media or Google, or those really, really big ideas that do change the world, that have a really good positive impact in the world. And some of them are developed in remote countries, but more of them do develop in America. So what that made me think about was, again, I'll read it again. The larger a hunter-gatherer group is, the greater the chances are that one member will dream up an idea and it could advance technology. And I think the analogy that they got that from was, building, creating fire, or creating a tool that would allow them to travel more speedily, or maybe a weapon that would allow them to hunt animals. But there was something about the group mentality, the group dynamic, that allowed someone within that group to develop a technology. And I thought that was very, very interesting. So I just wanted to bring that up. And the last article, Education in the Era, the Future of Learning, Education in the Era of Partners in Code. Now, that article was actually pretty ambitious in its prediction of the future. It kind of speculates on what we should look out for in the future of learning and technology, and it's pretty provocative, and it admits that throughout it, that there's debatable things that we should be concerned about in the future of education. And about halfway through it, there's a page. Let me just blow it up here so I could see it and talk to you about it. It actually outlines the people, structures, and society, and the technology that we should be concerned about throughout it. So, for instance, a societal concern under the category of smart transactional models, self-improving learning ecosystems. So what if we had a Blackboard system that when it did an automatic update, it changed the way we actually learned something? That's a pretty ambitious thing to say. I don't know if that's actually ever going to be possible, but it's things like this that it's speculating, and it sort of outlines things to watch out for in the future of educational technology. So it was interesting. I just didn't I was really, because it was very speculative, and I had a hard time believing it. I guess is what I should say. So those are the articles that I read, and that's my I guess my anti-synthesis, because I didn't really find any kind of synthesizing between them, although they were all individually interesting and had motivations in the underlying side of them. So here are a few articles that I was able to pull from EduCause, which is a well-known technology resource for people in leading in higher education. A very rich resource, for that matter, when it comes to coming up with documentation that's peer-reviewed. So I pulled these 3 articles out, and the reason why I think that they're cutting edge or groundbreaking or seminal are because as I've been doing my research in this program, I'm finding that the role of technology in higher education is really at a crossroad. It's at a point, well, maybe I should say at a turning point. Until, or maybe over the last decade, or maybe 5 to 10 years, yeah, 5 to 10 years or so, IT has been thought of very much as an operational department, and at least in larger institutions, and moving into now 4-year schools as well, it's becoming more of a strategy-based organization, the groups of those that run IT, because of the fact that technology is embedding itself more and more into our everyday lives. Students, faculty, staff, alumni, everyone is using it. It pretty much falls in almost every context these days. So there's a lot of change when it comes to the leadership of that, and to how even some of the team members within technology have to perceive themselves in the context of the institutions that they work for. That said, there are now written articles coming out about how technology personnel in higher education need to start thinking about where they stand and what they're doing among their constituents. So the first article, the redesigning IT governance, that's listed on the top left there, is really about digital transformation, and how the entire, if you read the whole article, it's really about not transforming the digital aspects of the university, but transforming how IT members should govern themselves. So when they say IT governance, they're talking about internal departmental change, changing the perspective of the IT team members so that they can play nicer with the educational community. Whereas in the past, they were really just sort of break-fix guys. Now they're more of proactive, strategic thinking, aligning themselves with the institutional vision, mission, and strategy. And in order to do that, they need to have better communication skills. They need to sit where the eyes of the institution are, and that's the big challenge of what's going on. So that's really what this article is about. It's about transforming the perspective of IT team members. So, and the next article, more than a title, lead from where you are. This bodes very well for the literature that we've read until now, whereas it says much about how leadership is about communication, and that in order to influence people, you have to be able to genuinely connect with them and elevate your level of service to them by being empathic, I guess was what I'm trying to say. So to be a better communicator and to do so empathically will make you a better leader in terms of leading in technology. It also makes note of a book that I think I knew about, but now that I see it again, I think I might take a second look at next time I'm in the store. the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. Follow them and people will follow. That's the name of the book, 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. Something tells me I might have heard something from there before, or maybe, I don't know, I might have read part of it or something. But anyway, there's a quote from that. The author's name is John Maxwell. It says, the higher you want to climb, the more you need to lead. The great impact that you want to make, the greater your influence needs to be. So what this is really talking about is, the article is that in order to improve yourself as a leader, you can't really just do that overnight. Some people think, oh yeah, I'm going to spend 10 years in this department, then I'll get promoted to manager, and I spend another 10 years and I'll get promoted to director. I spend another 10 years, maybe I'll be a chief, right? I think that this article is saying that the reality of that is that there's more to it than just sitting in a chair and waiting 10 years, and that there's a lot of background that things that occur that before you can be qualified to lead from the top. And hopefully that's sort of like what we're doing here, right? We're educating ourselves on change leadership. So and the other article, the last article, is the legacy for the future, aspiring and residing IT leaders. So this really takes you through a few steps, like a 10-step process of creating a plan, and it's really more internally driven. Creating a plan or roadmap for your team. So this is really about becoming an IT leader for the first time, and what you should do as a leader in technology in the first stage of managing other people. Creating a plan, making sure your employees are motivated and challenged, and that their goals are clear. Making your plans come to a realization and things like that. So this just sits with me because it's something that I kind of identify with, although it's not quite as high level as some of the things we've discussed so far. So in this slide, I present my key takeaways from this project and processing of all the literature that I've read in the past, in this course, and so really what we're trying to do is we're trying to make change leaders out of all of us, out of all of the students that are in the class. And so in looking back at them, I just really thought that it's the literature that we read and that we reflect on, and the practice of the things that we learn over time, like I had said in one of the previous slides, that in order to become a reputable leader, I think that you need to practice things over time, and an internal motivation. You need something inside of you that tells you this is the right thing to do, and people are going to need these things. So the literature, practice, plus reflection and motivation, all those things together. I don't know, maybe there'll be an add-on to this in the future and in the next courses. So I hope that's true. So, but this is what I've taken away from this project, and I'm sticking to it. Dr. Bureau, thank you very much for watching my presentation on the synthesis and literature for creative leadership. And this is for Education 801-150, Creative Strategies for Educational Leaders, Spring 2019. I look forward to reading your feedback on this project, and I'll see you in class. Take care.